Hey y'all, Justin Carpenter here with Wandering Toward Truth. Just wanted to do another sharing of my perspective, kind of on what's happened recently with the controversial Doctor Summit and the censorship that has ensued. So, in case you haven't heard, there was recently dozens of doctors that went to DC to kind of share their testimony of ways that they've been treating patients with this illness and how the successes that they've had with using hydroxychloroquine amongst zinc and zithromycin um, to kind of combat this illness. And the censorship that ensued, as soon as they started posting videos about it, they were deleted off Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Like me even talking about it, I risk getting censored as well. But I'm going to talk about it anyway, just for the sake of getting the truth out. Um, but yeah, so they had all of these all of their voices essentially attempted to be systemically silenced by big tech. And then what later ensued have been tons of hit pieces that have come out, proclaiming that this is a conspiracy theory and that there's no validity to it and it's unsafe and all these other things. So I just wanted to kind of jump in and share a few things that kind of indicate otherwise, and but let you do some research yourself and see what you think. So we'll jump right into it. So the first thing I want to show is this website that I found called C19study.com. Really helpful compilation of these studies on hydroxychloroquine use within dealing with COVID-19. So you can see here in this first chart, it shows, the comparison between countries who have throughout used hydroxychloroquine early in combating this illness and those who have not. And just to get some perspective here, just so it's not, again, I'm not pushing fear with these numbers anyway. These are all well under 1,000 deaths per million, which is meaning that even in worst case scenario, that's still 99.9% survival rate across the board. So just want to put that in perspective. But people have died from this. This is a real virus, and it does definitely affect people. So we need to be looking at all potential cures to deal with it. And hydroxychloroquine, when paired with zinc and azithromycin, have been shown to have promising results. And I want to clarify, I'm not a doctor. I don't treat patients for this, but I do want to put forward some perspectives of doctors who have treated patients with this and share with you some information that you might not have heard otherwise. So this chart's pretty clear. You can go through and see that they update it daily. Haven't updated it today, but they update it pretty regularly along with the COVID death count. And what they show here, so looking down below, is they list all studies. So all studies that they found, which they've got 69, and of those 39 are peer-reviewed, so peer-reviewed by other scientists for validity. They found 65 studies on hydroxychloroquine use. And within those studies, what these figures mean here is, and you can actually distinguish between all of these, but if it's used as a prophylactic or preventative, it's got 100% efficacy. And then PEP, I'm not sure. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know the difference between these two terms. Oh, here we go. Pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP, and then post-exposure prophylaxis. So of both of these, all the studies are either inconclusive or positive. So you've got no negative results within those. Early as in when someone is just starting to get sick, again, 100% efficacy by these studies. And then late, when someone's really sick, that's when the data is not as conclusive. But it's also this is when most of the studies are done by those who are politicizing this cure and wanting to show that it doesn't work. So they find, oftentimes find the sickest people to give this to, and then when they say it doesn't work, they're like, "Oh yeah, this thing doesn't work." But if you catch it early enough, it clearly does show promise. And even when you're late, it's still better than nothing. Like I would hate to just tell somebody, "Oh well, this is a proven treatment, so you're just gonna have to die. And we're not gonna be able to do anything about that." Like that sounds pretty crazy. But anyway, so I wanted to show you all this. And each of these studies you can go through and you can see the sources, where they come from. The summaries are all listed here. So it's pretty extensive. And I've looked through a handful of these, and they've all got good, solid information in them. And you can do further digging yourself. And I'll make sure to list all the links that I'm about to put forward in the description box so you can do some research yourself. But wanted to share that aspect of it for sure. So this is kind of the international look at it, and all the studies internationally that we've seen shows very promising results. But let's jump back into this country, the U.S., and see kind of what we've been looking at. And I'm going to bring up this article from April 27th, so way back, and it's got a pretty heavy accusation here. But let's unpack it and see it, because this information was quickly labeled as conspiracy theory and baseless, and fact checked like crazy, and said that it's not true, which is very debatable. But we'll unpack it. So this article is essentially claiming that Dr. Fauci and the NIH had conducted a study back in 2005 showing that chloroquine, which is a milder derivative of hydroxychloroquine, as in it's less likely to be less likely to cause adverse effects, because chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine are derivatives of quinine, which is a very potent antiviral drug that's been used for at least a century now. And these are some milder derivatives that have been used in the pharmaceutical industry for a wide range of things, from lupus to malaria, but they're showing promising results for other things, including this COVID stuff. So the claim here is that in this study and in the NIH, they actually took hydroxychloroquine and found that it was very successful in treating SARS-CoV infection in primates, which is pretty exciting. So at the least, they knew that it worked from that perspective. And in case you doubt that, here's the actual article from the NIH, straight from their website, and it says very conclusively that chloroquine is effective in preventing the spread of SARS-CoV in cell culture. Now, we're dealing with a different strain of SARS-CoV. They call it SARS-CoV-2, so it's slightly different. But if it's this effective at dealing with one, shouldn't we at least be expanding the study and looking at it? Shouldn't we have been doing that early on? This seems pretty promising, but yet we don't really hear about it much until the president mentioned it, and then even when that happened, it's been systemically attacked since then. And that's kind of what this article further goes into, is the amount of times that this thing has been attacked. And it also references doctors who have come out and reported great success with it, especially, so this guy, Dr. Vladimir Zelenko, he's been one of the most outspoken from the beginning. And this is all the way back in March that he reported starting to use it, just because he was seeing such promising results within other countries who were using it. So he sent an open letter to all medical professionals, included the president in this too. But here's his letter here, which you can read, and it shows just kind of like what he did within
his practice of treating people who had COVID-19. And so he gives the specific regimen that he gave, and then he goes into the results. And essentially, of the 350 patients he treated back in March, who knows how many they are now? So 500 patients actually, because another 150, so 500 patients. He claims to have zero deaths, zero hospitalizations, zero intubations, and the only side effects were temporary nausea and diarrhea because they're potent, and you're basically doing a detox when you're getting rid of this virus. So that's understandable to kind of have a reaction like that, but no adverse effects otherwise. It's a relatively safe drug that's been used for a long time, and these other zinc is a naturally occurring compound and that we all need, and azithromycin I believe is an antibiotic. I'm not 100% sure on that, but again, just report. I'm not a doctor. I don't know for sure, but I'm just reporting what other doctors have spoken about, so that you can kind of research it yourself and come to your own decision. So anyway, Dr. Zelenko gave this back in March, and the president mentioned it as well. Um, but then you see, we all saw the widespread attack of this drug, touting that it was unsafe. There were all these studies that showed that it caused more harm than good that they touted, and I want to go into that as well. So the first one they looked at, I'm going to show a quick article, but everyone remembers the VA study that most in the mainstream media were using to say that this was harmful. It caused patients to die when they took it, but this article kind of unpacks that a little bit. And again, I'm not trying to be political in all this. That's what gets so frustrating with this, is like we're dealing with the virus, and we're dealing with things, possible solutions. So I don't really care what your political party is or what you're saying, but if you're going to put forward real solutions that can actually help people, I'm going to listen to it, and I'm going to take a look at it. And if you're not, then you're part of the problem, and so that's where I draw the line. It's truth versus fiction, and that's all there is to it. Um, but essentially, what the study goes into is talking about the VA study where they found that people didn't really recover from it, and a lot of people died anyway. But what was eventually found out was that within the study they didn't get any peer review. They didn't get peer reviewed by other scientists, so it was just posted online, and the mainstream media picked it up and ran with it. And they also didn't. They made no mention of doctors prescribing zinc. And so I'll just read this. The study made no mention of VA doctors prescribing zinc along with hydroxychloroquine, even though doctors and medical experts believe that hydroxychloroquine can only work in partnership with zinc. So essentially, my understanding is hydroxychloroquine kind of opens up your cells and allows zinc to perform, to kind of provide a protective barrier to some extent. Again, I'm not a scientist. This is just what I've heard and my understanding of it. Um, And then they also found out that the one of the authors took a research grant from Gilead. So Gilead is prescribing or is working on remdesivir, which is a competitor drug to hydroxychloroquine in treating COVID. So already he's got a financial bias to kind of skew the study as well. And what they also found was that the um, let's see if we can find it here. Yeah, so hydroxychloroquine is more likely to be prescribed to patients with more severe disease. So all of these people that were given hydroxychloroquine and touted with this observational study, not a clinical trial, not a peer-reviewed trial, just an observational study, they found out that they were only prescribing it to patients that were like literally on their deathbeds. So people who had comorbidities who were likely to die within that were likely to die regardless of what was given to them. and it's believed that they did this just to kind of skew the results to make it look like, hydroxychloroquine doesn't help and might even hurt you and all this other kind of stuff. So this article breaks it down. Again, I'll list the link to this one as well, so you can kind of research it for yourself. But I won't go into a ton of detail on it. But yeah, so that was one sort of bias study that was touted by the mainstream media to say this doesn't work. And then they also had the Lancet study that was produced. So this was, so just to give a quick summary, the Lancet study was put out to indicate that hydroxychloroquine does not work and it might actually do more harm than good. And so what happened when the Lancet, who's traditionally a very acclaimed publisher within the medical world, which I don't necessarily agree with if they're going to publish something like this, but they published this and then they end up having to retract it because they found out that the providers, those who did the study at Censorship Corporation, the ones who actually conducted the study, they refused to provide any of the data for peer review. So they just were like flat out said, no, we're not going to get that. They gave it under their reasonings were what they would violate client agreements and confidentiality requirements. So it's, that's one thing to say, but if we're going to say that a study is proven, we can't hide the data. You can't just say, oh, well, we came up with a study and we did this and this is how it went. So the Lancet actually had to retract this whole study after enough scrutiny was given on the study, and this was after the mainstream media had touted this study, getting people to fear this drug and say, you should never take it. It'll hurt you. It might hurt your heart. Blah 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 blah. All this stuff, all to get people to fear it. And then we find out that the study that they're touting is made up. It's bunk. So yeah, I'll post that as well. And then this article gives a good breakdown of that retraction, kind of the political. Again, like, it's ridiculous that this has become politicized, but it has, and we're dealing with people living and dying, which is insane to me. But this article does a good job at summarizing how that kind of conversation went, and here's an example of where the mainstream media is touting that it causes increased risk of death, but then you find out that the Lancet study was phony. That's really all we can get from it. If you can't provide information on it, then we're just going to assume it's fake. That's how real science works. If you can't provide your data, then we're just going to assume it's biased and not take it at all. So yeah, this article breaks it down pretty significantly and goes into that. So again, I'll post that as well. So yeah, that's kind of it as far as what I wanted to put forward. It's weird that we have to dance around this subject when it could have easily saved a lot of people. I mean, again, going back to this chart, this is just taking a handful of countries. I bet if we took a global study across the board and find out which countries use hydroxychloroquine on a regular basis in combating this thing, I bet we would see some pretty clear results. If this isn't clear enough as it is. But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of put that out there, give my take on the matter, and just draw on how ridiculous it is that any institution, whether it's big tech or the mainstream media or whoever, who gives them the right to say that doctors are not able to treat their patients with anything? Who put them in charge as the dictator of our health? And that's where this whole thing gets so wild because the only reason that they do this, the only reason that they censor this thing, or at least that's my belief, is because any sort of solutions, and we've seen this time and time and again, but any sort of solutions that are put forward to reduce the amount of fear within people and concerns with COVID-19, this coronavirus, like they're automatically pushed aside and ridiculed and touted as fake or whatever, because anything that doesn't fit with the fear narrative is automatically um, the enemy to these people. They don't want solutions. They don't want reduction of fear. They want to keep the fear going. And the fact that it's being politicized as well is just kind of further indication that there's no reality to it in a sense of dealing with health. This is not about health. This was about like political gain and control and power, and pushing fear isn't a very effective way of doing that. So yeah, a little bit longer video. Appreciate you sticking with me if you have so far. Again, I'm going to provide all the links below to what I've put forward, and I'm happy to share any more. I'll drop the presentation. So the doctor study, or the doctor's summit in DC was deleted off YouTube, but I'll put a BitChute link to that presentation so that you can see for yourself what they really don't want you to see, because that's what it really all comes down to, is we should be free to make the decisions that we want to. We should be free to make the decisions about our health, and no one should be able to stand between that. So yeah, but and I'll just draw on one like kind of scenario. It's like, if someone's dying from this thing, why are you going to deny them something that can help them? Even if we don't have studies, all the studies in the world to prove that it's 100% safe, why are you going to deny somebody to try something if they're dying? That doesn't make any sense. We should be allowed to try what we feel is right. Again, we should be allowed to take the risks that we want to in all scenarios, and I stand by that in all doubt. But anyway, yeah, just putting this out there. Love y'all, and happy to answer any questions or talk about this anymore. But yeah, keep on researching, keep on looking for the truth, and I'll talk to you next time.